Hogan just said that because certain things were cheaper under Trump, it's a failure of Biden. Will Hogan acknowledge, therefore, that because those very same goods were cheaper under Obama, Trump also did something wrong?
Well, I'm sure they were cheaper under Grover Cleveland, too. That's not the point.
That's exactly the point.
The point is, where are we now?
You're just making...
Can we get the inflation back to where we were? And the answer is yes, with the right policy.
Are you calling for a deflationary spiral? I mean, here's the thing I don't understand, Megan, and I'm not asking this rhetorically. I actually want to understand this as someone with a background in economics. If inflation goes below zero, you create a deflationary spiral where people expect things to be cheaper in the future, and so they wait to buy anything, which hurts the economy.
In this segment, David Pakman takes on Megyn Kelly and Hogan Gidley in a sharp 2-on-1 debate, and the outcome is anything but close. Kelly and Gidley, both staunch defenders of Trump, attempt to pin the blame for inflation entirely on President Biden. I won't sit here and say that Biden, or any Democratic president for that matter, had a perfect economy, but I also won't sit here and let Republicans say that about all of their presidents. Pakman immediately cuts through the political spin, highlighting how this narrative conveniently skips over the economic conditions set in motion during Trump's term and broader global factors. As the conversation unfolds, it becomes increasingly clear who's engaging with the facts and who's just parroting partisan lines. Gidley stumbles when pressed, and even Kelly starts losing her grip on the argument, making Pakman's dismantling of their talking points all the more compelling.
This is
let me just add to that. So even Trump said this on the stump just last week. He said we were around 1.4%, which is even better than zero for the exact reasons you just cited. Keep going.
2 to 3 is typically what you want. That's where economic growth comes from. So the thing I struggle with, and I really do want to understand it, because for me, people who know me know I don't play political games with gas prices. I don't play political games with inflation. My view on this is just from economics. The goal from which traditional economics, not Marxist left-wing stuff, traditional economics says you want around 3% inflation because that is an incentive to buy now rather than later, and it's where wage growth and economic growth comes from. Hogan seems to, I guess, want deflation, which doesn't seem to be good. So just maybe someone who knows more can explain it to me.
No, I guess that's not happening now. Okay,
Hey, you there. If you guys like this video, please consider subscribing, dropping a like, and maybe commenting. This really boosts the video in the YouTube algorithm, and we would like to spread this message to as many people as possible. Let's get back to the video.
Let's go back to immigration. Oh, go ahead, Hogan, if you want to.
So here's my view on immigration, and I already laid out part of it. I believe that without immigrants, the country collapses, and I think it's abundantly clear. If anything, as far as legal immigration, we probably need to increase it significantly to remain globally competitive, especially as birth rates are starting to decline. Big picture, I think that that's a big issue here. In addition to this, when it comes to the sort of crime narrative, we know from very good studies, both state and federal, both documented and undocumented immigrants commit crime at lower rates than natural-born citizens. Now, I know Trump
even one
loves
is
the
too many.
lurid
Let me just
tales.
take you on that. Well, even one is too many. Why do I have to deal with these illegal immigrants committing felonies against my friends or family when they shouldn't even be here? American-born, yes. That's one thing. I got to deal with Americans. Why should I have to deal with somebody from Venezuela who snuck in here illegally and committed a felony against a family member?
I'm not denying that if they are here illegally, they are subject to deportation, but I'm trying to build up my view to try to have a conversation that goes beyond the talking points on this. So if we start
that's not a talking point. That's actual crimes. We just asked Laken Riley's family down in Georgia.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I
guess it doesn't
correcting you.
Like you're talk, it's fine.
I want you to talk, but you're casting an aspersion that I'm spewing out some sort of talking points to you, and I'm saying actual Americans are being killed. It's not a talking point.
We're not really digging more deeply here. We're not really digging more deeply.
Pakman calmly shifts the debate into the realm of economic reality, explaining that a modest inflation rate, usually around 2 to 3%, is actually a sign of a healthy, growing economy. In fact, it's considered a necessity by pretty much all economists globally. He even points out the irony that Trump himself once claimed 1% inflation was ideal and denied that it existed under his watch, despite inflation never being zero during his presidency. Rather than address any of these facts, Kelly deflects entirely, changing the topic to unrelated issues like immigration and crime, two classic MAGA talking points that are commonly blown way out of proportion. Pakman doesn't let it slide. He calls out the pivot for what it is, a tactic to avoid a losing argument. When the data doesn't support their claim, Kelly chooses distraction over substance, a move that's become all too common in conservative debates.
So we have a situation here where obviously we are completely understaffed when it comes to immigration judges and being able to adjudicate these asylum claims. We also have circumstances in people's home countries that we could be better working on at a fraction of what it costs to deal with the problem domestically, which no one ever wants to do. I actually think that one of the great tragedies on this issue is that both Democrats and Republicans, for different reasons, have been unable to get us closer to what we might call a more semi-permanent solution on some of the low-hanging fruit. I mean, even most Republicans I talk to acknowledge the individuals brought here undocumented when they were minors. We're not going to send them back. They need a path to normalization here, whether it's a permanent residency or citizenship. There's so many things everybody agrees on. And for different reasons, either because they don't want their political enemies to get the credit for it or because they want to save it for when they get elected as something to run on, we could deal with probably 80% of this. I think this might be crazy. I think Hogan and I could agree on 80% of this if we were in charge of this. And it's disgusting to me how both sides, to different degrees, end up getting in the way of permanent solutions for political reasons. Now, obviously, as someone on the left, I'm more partial to the view of immigration that I think is more on my side than Hogan's. But that being said, I don't see any progress on this issue because everybody wants to keep reserve and use it to their advantage in a way that goes beyond other issues. And
Let me ask you about that, Hogan. Let me ask you about that because Trump, as you well know, his biggest critic on immigration is Ann Coulter, who is a dyed-in-the-wool conservative. And she's as angry as anybody about the fact that, as Dave just said, the wall was not built. Now, Trump had constructed some wall, but it was not completed the way Trump promised. And to Dave's point, Trump had control of Congress and the White House. The Republicans had control of Congress and the White House for his first 2 years of his presidency. He actually could have pushed massive reform through on immigration and did not do it.
As the discussion veers into immigration, Pakman takes the opportunity to call out both parties for failing to act. Bipartisan accountability should be way more common than it is, instead of the usual pointing fingers across the aisle from both sides. He argues that real solutions to immigration are often avoided because they're more useful as political wedge issues. In fact, he even suggests that he and Gidley would likely agree on most of what needs to be done if the politics were stripped away. The irony, he notes, is that even Trump's own promises, like building a border wall, ended in failure and dishonesty. And yet, despite that, the conversation keeps getting sidetracked by partisan attacks instead of focusing on meaningful reform. That dysfunction is exactly why immigration policy remains broken.
Yeah, with Paul Ryan as speaker? I don't think so. I mean, some of the biggest fights we had internally at the White House were with Republicans who didn't want to change the system, who didn't want to build the wall. Remember, we had to use military money to do it. Nancy Pelosi stood up many times and pounded her fist in those meetings or walked out and said, I'm not giving a single dime to this border wall, and then went on to sign multiple budgets that had border wall funding in it. So Dave's right. The whole thing's a political sham and theater for the most part. I would argue more on the left than the right. But even still, the solution here has to do with preventing people from coming into this country illegally. Yes. We already let in more than a million people a year legally. So how many should we let in, I guess, is the real question here. And as far as what you pointed out at the beginning, Megan, think of it this way. Every rape, every murder, every burglary, every assault, every DUI committed by an illegal alien is 100% preventable, because they should not be here in the first place. And while our citizens may commit crime at a higher rate than legal or illegal immigrants, we got our own problems. Why would we import more? And now with people flying in from other nations, the Chinese nationals spiking from a few hundred in the first couple of years of Joe Biden, now 35,000, I think, already in this year. We're not even halfway through the year. That shows you we are in line for some serious problems that we're going to have to face and address in the future. And it's going to be a difficult task if Donald Trump were to win re-election to fix all of this, because we're in such a hole now. The American people hate where we are with immigration. We're going to have to
That's why
fix
Joe Biden's doing something. That's clearly why. I mean, he's feeling the political pressure. Yeah. But just as an
Megan,
FYI,
I know you probably
in 2018
on,
under
Megan,
Trump, we had
thing.
396,000 illegal migrants come in. That's not including the gotaways, the ones who weren't caught.
Yep.
But we had just about 400,000 come in. 2023 under Joe Biden, add 2 million to that. 2.4 million. It is not the same. It is nowhere near the same. We are at true crisis levels as defined by not Megyn Kelly, but the Obama administration.
Right.
This is a crisis that needs something done about it. What Joe Biden's done here is teaspoons in the ocean.
In the final stretch, the debate fully exposes how right-wing figures weaponize immigration for fear rather than solutions. Not only is it weaponized, but many right-wingers portray it as a nuclear bomb of an issue when in reality it's a 9mm pistol. Nevertheless, Gidley acknowledges that Republicans had the opportunity to fix the system and failed. Yet he still defaults to blaming Democrats. Meanwhile, Kelly amps up the crisis narrative with cherry-picked stats while ignoring the structural failures of past policies and completely disregarding all of the actually good things that come from immigration, even illegal immigration. Gidley leans into familiar scare tactics, painting undocumented immigrants as a threat, despite overwhelming evidence that crime exists across all populations and is even less prevalent on a per capita basis for both legal and illegal immigrants compared to natural-born U.S. citizens. Pakman tears it all down, showing that these narratives aren't designed to solve anything, they're built for headlines. In the end, what's clear is that Pakman came for a real discussion, while his opponents are more interested in political theater. That's a wrap from Eat the Narrative, where truth isn't polished, it's weaponized. If you guys enjoyed this content, please drop a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.